We'll watch for somebody else to pop on. Can you all see the screen? Here comes Gemma. Morning, Gemma. See these blog posts here on Schoology page, Kendall? Kendall, you still there?
Yeah, I thought I did those.
I checked and I didn't see them because it surprised me that you hadn't done it. But you might check. And, I'm not super. I'm not super concerned. Gemma, how are you doing? I'm not super concerned. You can, we can work forward. I've got a new one which I'll talk about in a bit. But let's see if anybody else. Man, poor sci-fi. This is hurt. My other classes, I'm getting almost 100% attendance, which is great. But again, doesn't matter. I've got these recorded. People can watch them at a later date. What I'd like to do now, I like to go into those breakout rooms. If we had more people here, I'd get you guys into the breakout rooms and ask you guys to, do two things. One, come up with one question, something you're confused about in the reading. It's a very confusing book. And two, something you highlighted, something you underlined, something that stood out to you that you thought was, kind of interesting, kind of cool. But we're gonna hold off on that for now. If you guys, who has a book, who actually got a copy of the book?
I have a copy.
I have a book.
You do? Gemma, don't we get to see you? No, that's fine. You girls, look at me. I'm in a tent. I don't care. Anyway, so unfortunately, I can't figure out page numbers on the online. Hayden, Jake, and Sean, are you just reading this online?
Yeah, I'm doing both. I'm following online with the audiobook as well.
How is the audiobook? I haven't listened to it. Is it okay?
The audiobook is good. He reads slow, but it's not too slow. It's like just enough to where you can comprehend it.
Good. Okay.
So he's not reading too fast.
He has a really weird voice though.
Is it? It's not Vaughn himself reading it, isn't he? I mean, he's dead now, but damn. So he's got a weird voice. That's always tough. Weird voices can destroy audiobooks. Good voices are great. Have you ever listened to Roy Dotrice read the audiobook versions of the what's the dragon series? Game of Thrones? He is great. If you're bored and you're looking for something to listen to, you want to go through the Game of Thrones things, he's got the Guinness Book of World's record. He holds the record for the most voices. He does all the different characters' voices. It's pretty fun. Anyway, I want to bring your attention to two things. Then I want to ask you guys about what's confusing you about this book. This is, I kind of mentioned it in an earlier class. I don't know if you guys were here or not, but this is toward the end of actually chapter 5. So we're going back a bit. But this is two things that Tralfamadorians. The first one's on sex and the second one is on time. The first one is kind of weird. The second one's weird, but I think kind of interesting. And I'll just read this to you. The Tralfamadorians tried to give Billy clues that would help him imagine sex in the invisible dimension. They told him that there could be no earthling babies without male homosexuals. There could be babies without female homosexuals. There couldn't be babies without women over 65 years old. There could be babies without men over 65. There couldn't be babies without other babies who had lived an hour or less after birth, and so on. It was gibberish to Billy. And frankly, that's absolute gibberish to me. It makes no sense. It's not very funny. I have no idea what it has to do with the larger themes of the book. And there's a lot of sections in this novel that are like that. And I know those are kind of frustrating. And my recommendation to you is just kind of blow right through them. But right after this, we get this famous description of time. And this is why, so Billy's sitting in this dome on Tralfamadore. He's in a zoo. I mean, before Montana Wild Hack joins him, naked, of course. There was a lot that Billy said was, sorry. There was a lot that Billy said that was gibberish to the Tralfamadorians too. They couldn't imagine what time looked like to him. Billy had given up on explaining that. The guide outside his dome in the zoo on Tralfamadore, had tried to explain it as best as he could. The guide, and I think this analogy is pretty good. And of course, we're most interested in this because of, how it approaches time. The guide invited the crowd to imagine that they were looking across a desert or mountain range on a day that was twinkling bright and clear. They could look at a peak or a bird or a cloud, at a stone right in front of them, or even down into the canyon behind them. But among them was this poor earthling, and his head was encased in a steel sphere, which he could never take off. There was only one eye hole through which he could look, and welded to that eye hole was a 6-foot pipe. This was only the beginning of Billy's miseries in that metaphor. He was also strapped to a steel lattice, which was bolted to a flat car on rails, and there was no way he could turn his head or touch the pipe. The far end of the pipe rested on a bipod, which was also bolted to the flat car. All Billy could see was the little dot at the end. Hang on, let me have Claire join. Hey, Claire. Oh, here's Mariam.
Hi.
Hey, Mariam. How you guys doing? We're on page, if you're up your book, we're on page 147. I'm just reading one passage here. All Billy could see was a little dot at the end of the pipe. He didn't know he was on a flat car, didn't even know there was anything peculiar about his situation. The flat car, which is a railroad car that he's bolted to, sometimes crept, sometimes went extremely fast, often stopped, went uphill, downhill, around curves, along straightaways. Whatever poor Billy saw through the pipe, he had no choice but to say to himself, that's life. So this is Vonnegut's imagination of our perception of time. We only see little bits and pieces, and it moves along incrementally. So it seems as if we're moving through time. Whereas the Tralfamadorians can see all time at once. And they can choose to look at a peak or a bird or a rock right in front of them or something. And these are analogous to the moments along the entire timeline, which now that Billy is unstuck in time, he keeps bouncing back and forth between. And that, I think, is actually kind of interesting. And some of your blog posts about free will, I think you guys were right to point out that, the Tralfamadorians, of course, don't believe in free will. They say that only on Earth do people believe in free will. And that's because they know all of time from the beginning to the end. And so everything's inevitable. Everything is not only already happened, but it's happening all at once. And so, this is why, they know do you remember how the universe ends?
Don't they blow it up trying to experiment with like a spaceship or something like that?
Exactly right. We know how the universe ends, said the guide. And the Earth has nothing to do with it, except that it gets wiped out too. How does the universe end? Said Billy. We blow it up experimenting with new fuels for our flying saucers. A Tralfamadorian test pilot presses a starter button and the whole universe disappears. So it goes. And of course, so it goes is that tagline. Now, why do you suppose Vonnegut is inventing this alien race, the Tralfamadorians, and this weird conception of time? Mariam, what do you think? I can't see Mariam, I can't see Claire.
Can you repeat the question?
I'm sorry, what's that, Mariam? That was really quiet.
Can you repeat the question? Sorry, my microphone might be.
Why do you suppose Vonnegut comes up with this alien race, the Tralfamadorians, and this strange concept of time as inevitable, as already having happened and still happening even now?
I don't know, maybe to I don't know, things kind of about time travel, so maybe to bring in that factor.
What do you think his purpose was in writing this book?
Well, he said before it was kind of like an anti-war novel,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, it's an anti-war novel, and it's. I mean, he was at Dresden. Did you notice in chapter 6? There's 2 times. Let me find him here. There's 2 times when we get this weird narrative intrusion. One is on page 160. I know most of you don't have your book in front of you, but this is when they first show up to the concentration camp. It's now a prison camp where the British officers who are keeping themselves, and they're getting 10 times the rations from the Red Cross that they're supposed to be getting. So they're in good health. They're keeping their chins up and stuff. They come out and hey Luke, they come out and they are singing hail, hail, the gang's all here from the Pirates of Penzance. And these British, but so the Americans come, the Americans are sick, they eat all this food, and suddenly their bodies, which have been starving, the welcome feast made them sick as volcanoes. The buckets of the latrine were full or had been kicked over. An American near Billy wailed that he'd excreted everything but his brains. Moments later, he said, "Oh, there they go, there they go." He meant his brains. And then we get this weird line, "That was I, that was me, that was the author of this book." So Vonnegut keeps popping up, which is kind of weird in a novel. It's also when they first get to Dresden. There's somebody says, where is it here? They come to the Dresden, the loveliest city that most of the Americans ever seen. This is on page 189 for those of you who have a book. The skyline was intricate and voluptuous and enchanted and absurd. It looked like a Sunday school picture of heaven to Billy Pilgrim. Someone behind him in the boxcar said, "Oz," as in like the Wizard of Oz, Oz the city. That was I. That was me. And so they keep, hey, Nicole. So they keep these weird narrative intrusions where Vonnegut shows up in his own novel, which is kind of strange. But so, yeah, I think Mariam's right. This is an anti-war novel. How do you deal with a tragedy like Dresden? Well, you claim that it was going to be inevitable. And one of the things that's always bothered me about this novel is, as you guys, said, this constant repetition of so it goes, when anything or anybody dies. Even Jesus Christ at one point, they talk about the death of Christ, and it's so it goes. And it seems almost kind of like this weirdly cavalier moment. But again, the character Billy, he says so it goes because he knows that death is just one moment in life. And he's going to, he'll be dead for a while. We find out in chapter 6 how he's going to die. And that's Paul Lazar is going to, hire somebody to kill him. He's the guy in that horrible scene with the dog where he feeds the dog the steak with the bits of metal in it. And the dog, it's terrible. So anyway, yeah, I'm not sure what's going on. And then there's the really nice moments. They're the moments on Tralfamadore where he's with this super sexy, actress, Montana Wildhack, and they're together in this dome in this kind of zoo on Tralfamadore. So I don't know. Because we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people, I'm going to break you into 3 rooms. We did this before. And I want you guys to take 5 minutes, talk amongst yourselves about what's confusing you. And I want each group to come back with at least 1 or 2 questions, specific questions that hopefully the rest of us can try and answer for you. So let me get this ready. I'm going to do 3 rooms, randomly assigned. So when you guys get an invitation, go ahead and jump into your rooms, and I'll see you in 5 minutes. Okay, so just click on that invitation. Good, Claire's there. Good. Sean, good. Mariam. Kendall, just go ahead and click. There you go. Oh. How's it going, Don? You want me to hit? That doesn't matter. I don't care about noise. I got five minutes. Okay, girl.